The Joni Lovenduski Prize is awarded every 2 years to the best PhD thesis in the fields of gender and politics. It recognizes the best doctoral dissertation using gender and sexuality studies perspective in political science, international relations, political philosophy, public policy, and public administration. The prize is awarded by the ECPR and the ECPR standing groups in gender in politics. This year, the Joni Lovenduski Prize goes to Ashlee Christoffersen for her thesis on the politics of intersectional practice, representation, coalition, and solidarity. She defended it at the University of Edinburgh under the supervision of Professor Richard Freeman, Professor Nasser Mir, and Professor Agugu Emejulu. The jury of this 2021 edition comprises 4 members: Gülay, Rosalind, Cavaghan, Hana, Kubátová, Lucas Platero, and myself as chair. We received a number of excellent nominations for the prize, but judged the Ashlee Christoffersen dissertation was outstanding on a number of criteria that were used to select the winner. The criteria used by the jury included the importance of the topic addressed by the dissertation, its contribution to theory and impact on and beyond the field of gender and politics research, innovation in the methodological approach and research design, and the quality of the writing. There were also other non-standard dimensions which were considered important, such as the reflexivity of the researchers on their own positionality, the fact that the research took risk, its contribution to the application and development of intersectionality, the consideration given to marginalized groups, and its usefulness to activism and policy making. We very much appreciated Ashlee Christoffersen's dissertation for its intellectual contribution, rigor, and depth of commitment to exploring intersectionality in practice. Her research is based on fieldwork conducted with networks of third sector equality organizations in England and Scotland, and uses a wide range of empirical materials, including interviews, focus group, observation, and document analysis. We were impressed by this work's commitment to drawing extensively on the intellectual contributions of women of color, providing a deep engagement with intersectionality in terms of research, epistemology, ontology, practice, and activism. As such, we believe this work is exemplary of how to combine sound empirical research, theoretical innovation, and the kind of egalitarian and authentic intellectual position most feminists aspire to. And with this, I would like to hand over to the jury so that they can also tell you why they believe this dissertation deserves the award.
Thank you very much. The dissertation of Ashlee Christoffersen is truly outstanding and innovative. It was a pleasure to read her work, and I learned a lot. The dissertation basically fills 2 research gaps in the field of gender intersectionality and policy studies. Intersectionality has been theorized a lot in social sciences, yet what is missing is a comprehensive operationalization of intersectionality for empirical studies within political science. Moreover, Ashlee Christoffersen's work fills another gap by probing the ways in which the concept of intersectionality is applied by public policy, social movements, and the third sector. She identifies a typology of 5 different conceptualizations and understandings of intersectionality in policy and practice. And this is truly illuminating, as this typology helps to understand how intersecting inequalities are governed in different political contexts. The methods applied, the way in which intersectionality is operationalized and employed for the empirical analysis, and the research results are extremely innovative and truly novel. The research is rigorous, of high quality, and I think this is the most important point, it's extremely self-reflexive and truly emancipatory. It was a pleasure to read the dissertation, and I'm looking forward to read even more of Ashlee Christoffersen's work, who's really an outstanding scholar. Congratulations.
So what I liked so much about Ashlee Christoffersen's thesis is the way that she starts from a problem that I think is very important within feminist political science, which is specifically the way that in feminist political science, the concept of intersectionality is often watered down and it is misunderstood, particularly in terms of the ontological dimensions of the concept. What we often see, unfortunately, is feminist political scientists thinking about the relationships between structural inequalities like race, gender, disability, in a way which is actually additive. And that's not at all what was the intention behind the original formulation of the concept in feminist social movements, particularly Black feminist thinkers as well. So what Ashlee does is she engages really squarely with that conceptual trend in feminist political science, but she doesn't replicate that problem. Instead, she provides a really detailed analysis of the different ways that people have understood the concept of intersectionality. And she also looks at how those concepts have emerged and what the implications for different marginalized groups are. So the question answers this really important and timely challenge in our field. And I would also echo what Gülay said about the way that the thesis provides a template for investigating and practicing intersectionality that others could emulate, particularly with regard to reflexivity. So when you look at the methodological chapters, which I think in political science, often we don't think enough about methodology, but if you look in the chapters on methodology in Ashlee's thesis, you find a really exemplary approach to reflexivity, which, for example, engages squarely with the privilege associated with whiteness and talks about uncomfortable, being uncomfortable intersectionality. And this is the kind of research that we really want to celebrate and we would like to see grow in our field.
I would like to join my co-chairs and congratulate you, Ashlee, for your excellent work that expands and pushes scholarship on gender and politics. A challenging theory to apply. Ashlee, in her dissertation, bridged theory and practice in her work on intersectionality, exploring how it has been applied in equality third sector organizations in England and Scotland, meaning voluntary, but also community organizations as well as social enterprise organizations, showing how competing concepts serve distinct interests and thus are championed by particular actors with various positions in the field of power relations, as she writes. Ashlee's dissertation will indeed have significant political implications. This is a careful, well-written, yet also provocative work, one which has also propelled me to come back to it even after we finished our jury deliberations. And I think this is what an excellent work does to you. It should make you restless, uneasy. It should make you want to read again and want to read more. And I applaud you, Ashlee, for doing that. Thank you.
I am so glad that Ashlee Christoffersen won this prize. Congratulations. Christoffersen's work represents a step forward in feminist political science, engaging with new discussions on how to do policy making in a way that considers the many layers that are intertwined in our lives. And it does so in an articulated and deeply analytical way, far beyond the mere descriptions of different inequalities. Her work is a step forward in the sense of bringing transformative perspectives that can improve the lives of many citizens who are often rendered invisible because they are not considered the average citizen. But who is the average citizen anyway? Ashlee takes risks in her work, engaging with a pragmatic approach to intersectionality, connecting academic discussions with what intersectionality means in practice, dealing with the gaps between theory and practice. Her work also sets an outstanding example that is relevant beyond political science. I would like to emphasize 3 qualities of her work, recapitulating on some points that we already made. Her work takes risks, shows relevant reflexivity about the concept of intersectionality and its application, and it's outstanding in the applicability of her results. Congratulations, Ashlee.
So I just first of all want to thank the jury very much, and I'm absolutely, of course, thrilled to have won this award. Also quite overwhelmed and a bit overwhelmed after hearing what everyone has said. And I guess also a little bit surprised since I think, well, as everyone has kind of mentioned, my work does go kind of a bit against the grain of gender politics scholarship. One reason for this is that I see it as being quite interdisciplinary. So throughout my PhD, while I attended the last European Conference on Politics and Gender, and in the UK, I participate in not only the Political Studies Association, but also the British Sociological Association and the Social Policy Association as well. So I see it as kind of sitting across these disciplines. So it's also made me feel, of course, very grateful to my supervisors, Richard Freeman, Nat Samir, and Akugo Imajulu. So this all kind of started for me with really finding Akugo on the internet and thinking she seemed amazing. We also have some background in common in terms of previous involvement in trade union and grassroots organizing. So I'm very happy and grateful that she kind of took me on and stayed on board with me, although she actually left the University of Edinburgh. And she also put me in touch with Richard, my other supervisor. And I'm very grateful to my research participants and to my examiners, Gail Lewis and Sharon Cowan. Given the kind of disciplinary nature of the award in political science, it also raised a kind of range of emotions, if I'm being honest. So it made me think back to my first degree, which was in political science back in Canada kind of a long time ago now, so going back 20 years when I started. And as a kind of first generation young woman from a working class background, I wouldn't say, apart from a couple of professors, I wouldn't say that I had the best time in political science, as I'm sure many people watching this video can relate to. It also made me think about how, as a white woman, I have that privilege, which was certainly at play in me having got the PhD place to begin with, having got funding for my PhD, and having had overall a good experience at the University of Edinburgh. So it made me reflect on that and the many Black students and students of color who've really been excluded from these experiences in academia in general, but in this discipline in particular. And so these reflections kind of bring me to the topic of my thesis, which has been discussed already. So really, I explored how the Black feminist theory of intersectionality is both understood and operationalized in equality policy and practice. So over about 1.5 to 2 years, I conducted ethnographic and participatory case studies of 3 networks of equality organizations, so racial justice, feminist, disability rights, LGBTI rights, refugee organizations, and kind of intersectional combinations of those. And a bit about my methods has been said already. I also interviewed equality policymakers and analyzed equality policy documents. So to the best of my knowledge, it was really the kind of first empirical study that explored how both policymakers and practitioners themselves understand intersectionality. So I asked people directly what it means to them across 41 interviews, as well as how they perceive themselves to apply it. And whereas kind of existing literature aiming to fill the kind of gap between intersectionality theory and practice has usually focused on how to operationalize it in research or in social movements, and literature on its operationalization in policy is also kind of growing, I see this project as filling a kind of key gap in knowledge in focusing on the equality NGO sector and its relationship with policy. So based on all this data, as has already been said, I identified that there are 5 competing, contradicting ways that intersectionality is used in UK third sector equality organizing and policy. Some further intersectional justice, while others actually deepen inequalities. I argue further that in the current context, operationalizing intersectionality is kind of fundamentally about representation, not only who is represented, so coinciding with a lot of other literature on the topic, but also the kind of question of representation, so whether and how to represent others, and coalition and solidarity, which also coincides with much other literature. So I think my contribution in relation to both representation and coalition is to identify that kind of conflicts in these arenas are driven by competing understandings of intersectionality. So I argue for essentially a careful examination of what is meant when the term intersectionality is mobilized in policy and practice, as well as specificity in these fields around what we mean when we use the term intersectionality. So the idea for this project really came out of my previous roles working in the equality sector in the UK. So first in an LGBT community development organization, and then in an organization which works across all of the protected characteristics in the UK Equality Act 2010. So in the UK context, partly because of this act, which unifies equality legislation across different inequalities, the term intersectionality has really been growing in popularity since I started working in this area about 15 years ago, and it continues to do so. So it's used at very high levels at Westminster and across all of the devolved nations in the UK. And as a practitioner, I saw that it was really being used to mean different things, some of which are kind of very removed from its Black feminist focus, which, as many have argued, and I share this view, is indivisible from it. And I also saw that practitioners, including myself, who had been accustomed to working in very siloed ways, struggled with thinking about how they could make their practice more kind of intersectional. So in terms of the kind of outputs from my PhD so far, so I published an essay about intersectionality in research ethics in the journal Ethics and Social Welfare, an article in the Community Development Journal, which looks specifically at the barriers that organizations face when they try to operationalize intersectionality, including austerity, for example. I published a chapter in the Palgrave Handbook of Intersectionality in Public Policy, based on my analysis of equality policy documents, which looks at the kind of disappearance of race from intersectionality in equality policy. And very recently, I've had 2 articles published, so one in Policy and Politics, which kind of shares the typology of intersectional practice that I developed, and one in Ethnic and Racial Studies, which focuses in on one concept in particular and how it serves to uphold white supremacy and efface intersectional marginalization among people of color. So I do also have some other kind of blog posts, and I've done quite a bit of work with practitioners. So my research participants and others, I organized a conference and developed a training workshop, or a kind of workshop with practitioners. I recently received a Knowledge Exchange and Impact grant to disseminate the results further. So soon I'll be publishing a briefing for practitioners and policymakers, an animation by an animator called Mary Martins, and some accompanying kind of videos. I'm also working on developing a monograph, hopefully, and some other articles, including one with my amazing supervisor at Hugo, which I'm working on at the moment and excited about that. So I've been fortunate to present findings at events, including the First Minister of Scotland's National Advisory Council on Women and Girls Circle last year, and an event of Equally Ours to mark the Equality Act's 10-year anniversary. And that's a kind of UK-wide network of equality organizations. So I'm currently a research fellow at the University of Edinburgh on a big multidisciplinary project called Gender Equalities at Work, which is producing a history of UK gender equality legislation around employment. And one of my contributions is to really look at the same topics in my PhD, but from a historical perspective. So the relationship between race equality and gender equality legislation, as well as the kind of influence and silencing of Black and women of color theory and activism, including intersectionality. And in the future, I'm kind of hoping to do comparative research in Canada, in North America, on the same topic as my PhD.
Thank you, Ashlee. All of this sounds really amazing. I would like to congratulate you again on a well-deserved prize. We are sure that the ECPR gender and politics community wish you the best in your future career, and they will be anxious to read your research. This year's jury also awarded an honourable mention to Malin Holm's dissertation, The Rise of Online Counterpublics, The Limits of Inclusion in a Digital Age. The jury finds that Malin Holm's investigation makes an original contribution to the study of the public sphere and the notion of counterpublics and inclusion. The rich empirical findings of this dissertation show that online media have offered new possibility for the articulation of racist and sexist political projects and the limits of strategies that focus only on inclusion. Malin Holm's work demonstrates a creative use of a variety of methods to capture different aspects of power in online media. These include interviews, social network analysis, textual analysis, and the co-creation of online material. This dissertation shows great potential to inform both academic and activist debates on the anti-feminist backlash, online activism, and the politics of inequality in the public sphere.